Welcome to another installment of Cracking Open, the podcast brought to you by the Sage Circle. In this series, I interview Sage Circle members to find out about their intuitive journey and development. Today's guest is Joelle, a coach and therapist. Joelle shares with us how her intuition unfolded through the passing of her brother and a soulmate connection. She also explores what it means to experience something negative and allow that experience to bring you to somewhere wonderful. Let's jump into Cracking Open.
This podcast is brought to you by the SAGE Method, the most comprehensive and down-to-earth intuitive development training available. Is this your year? Is it finally your time to increase your intuition, bring in more abundance, and experience the bliss you deserve? If yes, then join thousands of students across the world for a 7-week journey to uncover your natural, beautiful, and strong intuition. Visit us at thesagemethod.com for more information. Welcome back to another episode of Cracking Open. I am super excited to introduce to you Joelle, one of my favorite circle members. Hi, Joelle.
Hi.
I am so glad we just got done before we started recording, talking for like 15 minutes, just because it's so nice to be able to connect with each other. I absolutely love it. But let's jump in. Tell me your path. When did you open? How did it transform for you? Tell me a little bit about your intuition.
Okay. Well, so spirituality is not a thing in my family. Okay. It's never been a thing. Science. And in fact, though, that is one of the reasons why I was so drawn to you, is because you have this background in science. And I'm like, yes, she's the one. She gets it. Because you didn't open up until 31. And then it was like all of a sudden, like, what? And that's how I have been too. Although when I was a kid, see, there was a whole lot of anxiety. Okay. Whole lot of anxiety from an early age. Because, the people in my house, they didn't really jive. It wasn't that there was a lot of fighting, but I think there was a lot of tension, and I picked up on that. So I just experienced anxiety. And what I see looking back was that I always experienced energy as anxiety. But as a kid, I was interested in parapsychology. I was like, I want to be a parapsychologist. But then the thought of running into ghosts scared the bejesus out of me. So that was like, because I was a really scared kid. But there were things, so growing up, I had a glimpse. At this interest. And then my brother passed away when I was 16 years old. And I had this lamp in my room, and the lamp started going off and then coming on, let's say 2 hours later. And I remember one night it went off and I forgot that the switch was still on, and it went on at the exact moment my alarm went off to wake me up for school. I'm like, well, that's interesting. And I did feel like it was my brother. And I had a dream because there was this ex-boyfriend that I had. And in the dream, basically, I got a phone call and someone was crying. And I said, oh, hi, so-and-so. And that was the dream. And I got called into work for maybe 1 or 2 hours the next day, went to work, came back, and my other brother said, oh, he called, which he didn't really call at that time because we'd been broken up. He had gone to a different state. And had I not had that dream, I might have called him back. But that dream was like a warning to me. Like, don't get back into this old pattern. Don't do it again. And I really always felt like that dream came from my brother.
Nice.
Like, you don't want to do this anymore. But, I actually, the experience of all that anxiety, I went on antidepressants, in my 20s. And it dimmed my intuition quite a bit. Not that I have anything against antidepressants, but So for about 25 years, I was pretty dim.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I was dimming the energy, thought I was dimming the anxiety. And my intuition would come through when I would try to change to a different medication, or when I was pregnant with my son and I was on a lower dose, and all of a sudden I'm having dreams about my brother. And in the dream, it was always a similar dream where he's saying he's back, and he's saying to me, I'm not dead. I'm here. And I'd be like, but why did we think you were gone? Where did you go? Why did we think you were dead? And he's like, but I'm here. And it was during one of those times when I was switching medication where I woke up from that dream and I said, oh,
I get it.
Here. And I'm a little psychic too. And then I'm like, no, I'm not a little psychic. But yeah, he's here. And so the dreams stopped coming, but I understood why I was having them. And then I finally successfully switched medications.
Nice.
And was able to start bringing in information. I was able to start getting information and not have that overwhelming anxiety. So, so it was
you were on meds, so you got the right meds, meaning you got the meds that worked for you, and as a result of that, then you were able to access more of your intuition. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's
exactly.
how I've always seen it with people, is that it's not that antidepressants are bad. I personally had about 4 or 5 years where I used them as well to get over and get through, but it's not that the medication's bad, it's that you need to be in sync with the right one to get you moving forward.
This is exactly right. And so you need to have the one that basically allows you to be you.
Yes.
And I am now me. Although there were things that were happening, like, because I'm a counselor. So for years and years, I didn't do counseling because it was too anxiety provoking to me. Well, come to understand, the one-on-one in person with a client, I was feeling all their stuff. And I didn't know I was an empath. I didn't know how to shield. I didn't know that I had to shield. So that's why it was so anxiety provoking. So I had a life-changing experience. It took me 48 years, but I had a life-changing experience. Other people have a grandmother. I had a Bruno. And Bruno and I met online. He was in Portugal. I was in Boca Raton, and we immediately had these boundaries set up. And first of all, I will tell you, Bruno is sitting right next to me on the spider web.
Nice. I love
it. Yes, he's right next to me on the spider web, and he's always been right next to me on the spider web. And from what I understand, we've gone through life after life after life together. And I could feel it. Yep. And I've never felt that before. Yep. But we had these boundaries set up. He's in Portugal, I'm in Florida. He's got a wife, I've got a husband. He's very ill. He was only in his 40s or so. And so he's not going to jump on a plane. We're not going to meet in the middle, So our entire relationship was online. And even so, we could feel the energy going back and forth. And we became very, very close over a period of 2 years. And he had a few medical emergencies. And then he, in spring of 2018, he had a near-death experience. And he came back a different person. And it was a few months, and he was trying to tell me he wasn't going to be here very much longer, and his grandmother was coming to him, and he knew, but he also came back with abilities. And so in that last few months, he's like, this is happening and this is happening. I'm astral traveling. I can feel what you're feeling inside. And so because it was Bruno, I believed it. I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yep.
All right, and it was good because I was able to tell my dad. My dad was in the last few months of pancreatic cancer at that very time. And he was in the hospital, and he turned to me, and there's this strong atheism that runs through my family. My grandfather, my father, my brother, and now my son. It's almost like it's imprinted in the DNA. And I've never been that atheist, but my dad's in the hospital, and all of a sudden he's like, he doesn't want to be an atheist anymore. He wants to know that something's out there, because he knows that he's gonna die too very soon. And so he says, so you're telling me that there's something more? And I'm like, yes, Dad, I'm telling you, there's something more. And so I was able to tell him that in his last days.
Oh.
And I think it really meant something to him. And then that last day, when he all of a sudden he passed away, they could hear him talking to his people.
Yep.
As he was going.
Yep. I have goosebumps. That just warms my heart.
Yes. So it was very important. It was very important for me. It opened me up spiritually. It was like, okay, you need to pay attention. There is something more Bruno's telling me, and I believe everything Bruno says.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran into my Mack truck month.
Ooh, the Mack truck. Oh boy.
Yeah. So my dad passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And then my best friend, who's still here, because Bruno's my best friend in spirit. I have another best friend who's still here. Her son passed away very unexpectedly. Bruno dropped off the face of the earth. He couldn't communicate anymore from like full body paralysis. He couldn't speak, he couldn't type. And, just to tell you, he never came back. And my son went off to college, all in the same month.
That's a big month. Yeah, that's a Mack truck of a month.
That was a Mack truck month. And so I spent the next several months communicating with Bruno's wife. And we're just, is he coming back? No, he's not moving. He's dead, and it actually became more and more bizarre.
Okay.
Until we got to the point where I realized that she was pulling a scam.
Oh.
And so, and there were people around me, and I'm like, she's pulling a scam. Something's got really weird going on here. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, we think so too. And so we had our little group, and by mistake, thank you guys, by mistake, one day I send a message. It's supposed to go to my friends. I send it straight to her.
Okay.
He cuts me off completely, blocks me, everything, no communication whatsoever. And in this whole time that I've been wanting to hear from Bruno, I'm like, Bruno, communicate with me, Bruno.
Yep.
And I couldn't hear anything because there was so much interference from her. There was the drama, and there were lights. And once she cut me off, I heard Bruno.
Wow.
Yeah. And finally, it was able to come through. I started seeing pictures of Portugal everywhere. Mm-hmm. I ran into his name like 5 times in the period of 3 weeks, like walk into a client's house and the dog is named Bruno, go to another client, their last name is Bruno, watching TV and they're talking about, Bruno. And then at some point, I was so grief stricken over Bruno that I feel like I sent out an all call to empaths.
Yeah.
And people started messaging me and saying, hi, what's going on? Hey, I'm an empath. Are you an empath too? And we were like, I'm like, yes. Like, okay, my people are coming. My people are coming
mm-hmm.
in.
My people are coming. Exactly.
Here they are. And then it was like, I heard from Bruno, like a friend, and she's like connecting with Bruno while we're talking. And she's like, he's here and his people are with him. And he says he doesn't know why he's still alive. And, and he's in a facility, he's not at home, and his grandmother's there. And so these things just kept happening. And there was a piece of art, because he was an artist.
Mm-hmm.
There was a piece of art that I had gotten from him, my favorite piece of art, and I couldn't find it for months and months and months and months. And I knew it would show up right at the perfect moment. Finally, one day, I ripped out a drawer out of my desk. And underneath the drawer is his piece of art.
Oh, wow. That's
And
cool.
it had got like fallen under the drawer. I had, for some reason, put it in the drawer, but it had fallen under, but it hadn't gotten smushed. It was perfect, in perfect condition. And I just like dropped to the floor with this piece of art in my hand and like just sobbed, and I'm like,
Yep.
Bruno. And so all these people around me were telling me what I needed to do. And I'm like, should I go to Portugal? Should I try to find him? And luckily I had this good team around me of people. And every time I said, I'm thinking of going to Portugal to find, because he's my best friend and I don't know what's going on with him. And they're like, don't go to Portugal.
Okay.
Dangerous. Danger. We don't know why it's dangerous, but it was like so many people around me and they're like, don't go.
Yep.
So instead, what I did was I started seeing mediums and communicating with Bruno.
Mm-hmm.
And I started taking classes so I could hear better. Because that was my whole thing. I'm like, I need to hear him.
Yep.
So I'm going to start taking classes. I take a pendulum class. I take a grounding class. I take an automatic writing class. I start getting Reiki. I become a Reiki practitioner. I become a Reiki master. All to hear Bruno. And then it's like, oh, I've got abilities.
Yep.
I didn't know that. Okay. So this is all that happened as a result of this relationship with this man who sits next to me on the spider web.
Who is your friend?
Yes.
And soulmate.
Yes.
Really.
And
so many people can think about the term soulmate as if it's romantic. It doesn't have to be. You can be that close on what we call the spider web. On the other side, you can be right next to each other. It doesn't mean that it has to go in a specific direction. You can just be best friends. And now you're connected to him.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And then at some point, I just started getting the signs. It's like, okay, this song is from Bruno.
Yep.
And this bird is from Bruno.
Yep. I love the signs.
The signs are amazing. Amazing.
So
that was my introduction.
That's your introduction. So fast forward to today.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about how you use your intuition on a daily basis. What does that look like for you?
How I use my intuition on a daily basis. Oh, gosh. I try to connect on a daily basis. I GCP on a daily basis. I'm a coach and a counselor.
Yep.
And it's a difficult walk to, it's a balance because I use my intuition to meet my clients where they're at.
Yep.
Because I feel it, but I have to shield it. And luckily because of telehealth, there's just enough of a distance, a separation where I'm in a comfortable place.
Yep.
And I can shield enough, be in my comfortable surroundings, because I really couldn't do that very well person to person. And so I spent many, many years feeling like I was on the outskirts of my profession. Mm-hmm. And then I was given a message that it's time to go back in right before the pandemic hit. My jobs, which I had a couple of them, they disappeared.
Yeah.
But it wasn't because of the pandemic. It was because of insurance issues, and I kept seeing this telehealth platform.
Yeah.
And finally, I had a friend said, I'm working for this telehealth platform now. It's really good. And finally, I'm like, okay, I'm hearing you now. You want me to go back in. You've put enough of a distance and a shield around me where I can go back in and do this, and I'm needed.
And you can help.
Mm-hmm. And I can help.
You can help. And the fact that you have that awareness of your energetic body, and maintaining it and protecting it and balancing it, it means that you have that much more to give when you do work with a client, which excites me to no end.
I spend a lot of time with my clients talking about grounding.
Yep.
About grounding, about listening to their body, and this is stuff that I didn't know how to do.
Yep.
Until the past year or so. And so, so my guide sent me this message. You need to start with this telehealth. I'm like, okay, I'm going to dip my toe in,
Yep.
and then everything disappeared. I'm not going out in the community when there's a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, I need another telehealth job. And that one just came to me so fast.
Yep.
It's like, here, you got it. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I'm working more. I'm in my house. I'm working more, the abundance is coming in. I'm in my profession. I'm helping people through this pandemic.
Yep.
This is amazing. So it was really life-changing. And yes, I use it every day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All the time. I listen as much as I can. I'm always looking at the clouds. I'm always looking at the birds. I sit outside and I look around. I'm like, I'm here. I'm in the moment. I'm doing what I can.
Mm-hmm. And now you, as a Sage Circle member, have been a member for a while. I always smile when I see your name come over the screen. It's like, hello, Joelle.
I'm always like, hey, from South Florida.
I know, hey, from South Florida. Which components feed you the most when it comes to the circle?
It's really, it's a high vibration circle. It's a high vibration group because everybody is there to say, hey, this happened, and everyone comes in and then they're like, yay. It really, because, I'm in several empath groups, and some of them I just kind of stay because there's a lot of, why do narcissists always hurt me? And how come I can't get out of this hole? And empaths feel a lot of that, and I totally understand that, because there's so many empaths, and I'm not just talking about empaths. I shouldn't just say empaths, because intuitives in general.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you don't know how to shield, if you don't know how to protect, if you don't know how to set boundaries, those are some of the hardest things. So it's like it's easy to be in that hole,
Yeah.
But in your group, it's always, if somebody comes in and asks for help, it's a very high vibration.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this works for me. This works for me. And it's not, there's not an empath or intuitive as victim mentality.
Yeah, I find that the circle attracts people that are ready to grow.
Right.
And they're like, here, I'm not holding still any longer. So it really attracts very forward moving people. And then when that collective comes together, the forward momentum each individual feels it's really, really good. So yeah, there's not a lot of people that stay stuck. They're ready.
Right. It's there's definitely an exponential feeling there. It's like the positive vibe that comes in, it's multiplied by different people and the responses. So yes, I feel that in your group, in the Sage Circle. And I use GCP on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I've been working with it, and this was really interesting with the decluttering. Decluttering is really good.
Yeah.
It took me a while to use it. There was one week, it was about November, and I started decluttering. And there was one weekend when I just shredded paper all weekend.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
Doesn't it? Isn't it great?
It is.
And yeah, so, and once I decluttered, and it's funny because there had been 3 signs that came into me. This is how funny my guides have got to be, really funny. I don't know, but it's ironic because I got this job, and it turned out that I work with diabetics a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'm a diabetic, mm-hmm. but I was a somewhat non-compliant diabetic.
Okay.
I mean, I take medication, I exercise, but what I eat is not the greatest stuff. I was eating sugar, and the pandemic comes, and you're like, I
Oh
really
yeah.
deserve a bowl of ice cream, and
Oh
you know,
yeah. Yep. I deserve. Yep.
and it's like they kept putting, okay, here's a diabetic who's just non-compliant. Here's a diabetic who has lost a limb. Here's a diabetic whose retinas are detaching and his kidneys are going, and I'm like, finally, I'm like, okay, I'm listening.
Got it.
And
Yep.
I got 3 messages and I actually in my meditation sat down with Archangel Michael and I said, what do I need to do to raise my vibration? And Archangel Michael's like, you got to stop eating the sugar.
Yeah.
And so I did. Along with decluttering, I decluttered my body.
Yes.
And it was 2 weeks later that messages just started coming
in.
And 25 years of not being able to shed this certain weight. And there were 2 messages that came in about why I keep it on my body.
Yep.
That I was not aware of. It was just like, okay. And one was because I was not happy with my future, and this stuff I'd already moved past, but it was lingering. It was old energy.
Yep.
And I couldn't see my future. Well, now I see my future because I'm more passionate about what I do, and I'm a Reiki master, and I want to combine counseling and Reiki and just do a wonderful holistic thing. And
love it.
But I kept that weight on for many, many years because the only passion I had was eating, and I didn't realize it. And the other thing was that if I kept the weight on, I was more likely to stay in my marriage.
Yep.
Because in my mind, and only in my mind, it made me less attractive to a new partner.
There you go.
And this stuff just dropped in one day out of nowhere. And I'm like,
because of the decluttering, daily GCP, you took these steps to put your spiritual path awareness in front of you every day. And what I love about this is such a great example how it's not huge steps. You didn't start meditating for 3 hours a day to get to this. It was just the daily awareness.
Yes.
And then your guides, where the messages are coming from, these are super important messages that set you free.
Yes. Yes. And as soon as I heard that, because it was almost like I sat down at some point and made a contract with my guides. And if I was going to stop eating all this sugar, they were going to connect better with me. Yes. And after a couple of weeks, they're like, you did it. Here you go. And I was just getting a lot of just information. I'm like, wow, this is great. This is great. And I've lost a good 12 to 13 pounds, which I never had been able to do until I got the awareness of why I was keeping it on my body in the first place. And they also told me, they're like, hey, you can lose 20 pounds at least.
Yeah. and that'll fall off. So it's all about alignment. Now, I love this. I love your journey. It is sprinkled with moments of sorrow. I'm so sorry for your loss. But to hear the growth and the expansion and the opening just from the stuff that you're doing, what piece of advice would you give others who are on their spiritual path?
I would say pay attention and follow the path of least resistance.
Bingo. Yep.
Because I resisted so much all my life. It was like, because that anxiety would come up and it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to ignore that. Oh, no, I can't go back to counseling, right? No, it's too anxiety provoking. So when I finally started following the path of least resistance, I found myself. And I have to tell you that there's a plot twist, Bo.
Okay.
There's a plot twist in here because, with all these people that I brought in around me, one of them is a very lovely woman. And for some reason, I never sought her out to give me information until one day it was like, I need to talk to her. I need to talk to her. And FaceTimed, and she's like, I got to tell you that Bruno is a scam artist.
Oh, no.
And I didn't shut her down, because as soon as she said it, I believed it, because there were certain things I'd never been willing to see.
Mm-hmm.
But, and so it was an extra devastating several months that it took me. But by the time I found out, I was already well on my path.
Yeah.
So I still went forward. I'm like, okay, I'm not doing it for Bruno anymore. I'm doing it for me.
Yeah.
Because I started this to try to find Bruno, but I ended up finding myself. And then what I really realized was that even though I'm not sure what was true, what was not true, and the things that he told me, there was a lot of lies interspersed with truth. And it still was the most positive experience ever for me.
Yep.
So it really didn't matter what his human form in my life came in as, because it was the most supportive relationship ever.
Yep. Yep.
And so it was a real learning experience about duality. And things aren't always perfect, but you still get what you need out of them.
And that's also a learning experience about soulmates as well. Because again, they can be put into this fairy tale category.
Yes.
And not all soulmate connections would be deemed as perfect, positive, safe, loving, blah, 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 blah. They can be challenged too. I have had a soulmate in my past that was really not good for me, but wow, am I so excited to be the person I am today because of it, because I walked through that. And that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yes, it took me a while. And, I had a teacher, and I spilled, I'm like, I got to have this session with him. And I spilled the whole story. And there was one thing that he said, and he said, soul contracts are complicated.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, because after Bruno disappeared, I had this connection with someone that was so positive, and I still have that connection today. And whether it's Bruno's higher self, whether it's a spirit guide, it comes from Bruno, and he's this beautiful light.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter what his human was, what his human form came as. So exactly. It was, and I needed to know, because I'm like, why did I need to know? I really didn't need to know, did I? And the reason is because I have to walk forward in this life.
Yep.
And I have to meet somebody else. There are more soulmates coming.
Oh, yeah.
And absolutely. I need to be able to put this perfect person to the side, because he was never perfect.
But he got you. The two of you together got to where you needed to get to. I love the synchronicities. I put out a really small little teaching video every Tuesday, and literally this one this week is about soul contracts.
Oh, perfect.
And healing. Soul contracts. Yeah, healing from the end of the soul contract. So the timing could not be any better in talking with you.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for coming on here, for sharing your story, because it's so real. So many people who are listening to this are going to say, yeah, I had that relationship that was bad, or it turned bad, or something went wrong. But for everybody who's hearing this to stop and look at where you're at now as a result of it, and to love yourself, that's a powerful message.
That is, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Personal growth.
Personal growth. Thank you, Joelle. Thank you for coming on here with me.
Thank you for allowing me to tell my story.
Oh, I love that you did share it with everybody.